All right. So my question is, as a 49ers fan, because I'm assuming all 49er fans or everybody watching this is a 49ers fan or someone who follows the 49ers closely, are you happy? Because yes, there were a lot of holes to poke in how Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers approached the offseason after firing Nick Sorensen. Well, you can go back a year, firing Steve Wilkes, going with Nick Sorensen, seeing how that season developed, where, I mean, I was quite honest with you all the way through. There was a point about three-quarters of the way through the season, even up until the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, where I thought Sorensen would be back. What the 49ers decided, what Kyle Shanahan decided, was that um, there were plenty of other options out there who would be upgrades over Sorensen. It's now official. Robert Saleh is the defensive coordinator of the 49ers, but the 49ers had to sweat this thing out. And the fan base had to sweat this thing out because there were so many other good candidates who were picked off the board by other teams. The guy that I'd been talking about for like months was Jeff Ulbrich because he's the guy that Kyle Shanahan reached out to a year ago in order to replace Steve Wilkes. Jeff Ulbrich was not available at that point, and then what, a week or so ago, the Atlanta Falcons hire him. Dennis Allen, another good candidate. He's off the board. Other candidates were off the board, but what I had heard and what was widely reported was that Robert Saleh was Kyle Shanahan's number one target for this job. And there was a point where it looked like he could potentially be going to the Jacksonville Jaguars as their head coach. But then over the past couple of days, craziness around the NFL. And, on social media, I called the NFL the only reality show that I pay any attention to. I hate reality shows, but the NFL is something else. And they have cornered the market on making this basically a year-round soap opera. Liam Cohen, who is the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, says, I want no part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he takes his name out of the running. Widely reported he's going to stay with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's going to become the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. All that, all that, all that. An hour later, the Jacksonville Jaguars fire Trent Baalke. Now all of a sudden, Liam Cohen says, "Oh, you know what? I think I want that job." So that was the job where Robert Saleh was scheduled for a second interview with Trent Baalke and the Jaguars. Cohen takes that job. Robert Saleh aced out of that job. From that point, where I reported last night that all indications were that Saleh would be back as the 49ers defensive coordinator based on that job at Jacksonville, because no one really ever thought he had a big opportunity with the Las Vegas Raiders. Guess what? They hire Pete Carroll. And I'm so happy. The NFL world, the reality show of the NFL, is so happy that Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh are back in the same division. They were rivals at Stanford and USC. They were rivals with the 49ers and the Seahawks. And now they'll be rivals with the Raiders and the Chargers. So anyway, that's great. And then the other two pieces that fell into place for the 49ers were that Pete Carroll, as I said, Vegas Raiders, where Saleh was a candidate, and then Brian Schottenheimer becomes the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So Saleh is the 49ers guy. As I talked about, uh, Nick Sorensen won't be back with the 49ers in any role. What it was told to me was it was just too awkward of a situation for him to remain with the team as a special teams coordinator. I've also been told don't expect Brandon Staley back with the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan is the head coach of the 49ers. He runs the offense. And in a lot of ways, you can say that now Robert Saleh is the head coach of the 49ers defense. That's one area where I think Shanahan was kind of stressed out these last couple seasons, especially 2023, where he felt like he had to get more involved in the defense because he likes that style of defense, that Seattle defense that Robert Saleh knows so well, that D'Amico Ryans carried on, and he had to get really involved with Steve Wilkes. That didn't work out. And then obviously last year with Nick Sorensen, it didn't work out. The 49ers defense was generally okay when it came to yards allowed. They were still a top 10 defense in that regard. Heck, they were a top two or three defense for most of the year. But as bad as the 49ers were for most of the season when it came to red zone scoring offense, they were far, far worse when it came to red zone scoring defense. They could not stop teams in the red zone. So now Robert Saleh is back. He increased his profile based on his 4 seasons as the 49ers defensive coordinator. He goes on to become the head coach of the New York Jets. He was there from 2021, 2022, 2023, and then in 2024 he gets fired 5 games in. And actually, the Jets were a lot worse after they fired him. But the record wasn't good. 20-36 as a head coach of the New York Jets. He wants to be a head coach. Every coach wants to be a head coach, and he might get his opportunity. But what's interesting to me is that he's worked for Kyle Shanahan, he's worked for the 49ers, and he believed that his best opportunity to get back to where he wants to be, which is a head coach in the NFL, is to be a defensive coordinator on Kyle Shanahan's staff. So I think Shanahan is probably popping open a bottle of something and toasting that the path they took ended up being the right path. They had to endure the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan, probably a lot of naysayers, a lot of people saying, what are they doing? They've screwed this thing up. They're letting all these other candidates go by. And yes, their second, third, and fourth options were off the board. They didn't get any of those guys because those guys signed with other teams, but they got their number one guy. Robert Saleh, head coach of the Jets, gets fired after 5 games. He goes on to become an offensive consultant with the Green Bay Packers, and now he's back as the defense coordinator of the 49ers. Now, where I think Robert Saleh brings the biggest impact to the 49ers is just think about the energy, the enthusiasm, what he brought to the 49ers as a defensive coordinator. He had those blackout moments on the sideline. The camera loved him because he was so emotional. I think he missed that with the Jets. He wasn't that same guy, that passionate, fiery, excitable guy on the sidelines with the Jets. D'Amico Ryans had that with the 49ers, so excited on the sidelines. And we see it with him as the head coach of the Houston Texans. Oh, and by the way, I was very surprised on Friday to find out that Bobby Slowick has been fired as the Houston Texans offensive coordinator. So that kind of took me by surprise a little bit. But the past 2 seasons, Steve Wilkes started off in the booth very laid back, not a fiery guy at all. And then you had Nick Sorensen, who just didn't have a great personality as the leader of that defense. And I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but the 49ers, I don't know if it showed on the field necessarily. I kind of think it did. Certainly the talent level went down, of course, with the injuries and everything else. But I think having that role to be kind of that fiery guy, I think that's going to make some impact. And now it's all about how do you give Robert Saleh the tools for him to be successful? They have Nick Bosa, they have Fred Warner. I think they have some really good building blocks in the defensive backfield with Dialmador Lenore, with Renardo Green, with Malik Mustafa. Let's see what they do with Talanoa Hufanga and Jair Brown. They're going to make an attempt to re-sign Drake Greenlaw, but what do they do? What kind of resources do they do in going into the draft and trying to improve the defensive line? defensive tackles, edge rusher. I would assume that Leonard Floyd will be back. I would assume that Yetur Gross-Matos will be back. I would assume that Malik Collins will be back. Maybe Jordan Elliott. We'll see. But there are some building blocks there. Javon Kinlaw, I'm sorry, Javon Hargrave uh, won't be back. He will be a free agent. The 49ers have wanted him to like, hey, keep us informed what you're doing. And then we would like to be able to be in play to re-sign you. But I think the key for the 49ers is to get some young guys in there, some difference makers, some guys who can be part of the rotation. And that is the main thing. I think they're going to stay with the wide nine. I think they're going to stay with the same principles of the defense that they've had in the past, what they had in 2017, 18, 19, and 20 with Robert Saleh. But um, I think Friday, Thursday, Friday, those were good days for the 49ers because I think they improved with their defense by getting Robert Saleh back. And so now it's a matter of seeing where this thing goes from here. But those are kind of the takeaways. What I talked about on my last video here was that Saleh would be back. Now it's official, 100%. He's back with the 49ers. And also Sorensen is out. Um, Brandon Staley, more than likely, not returning. And now the next thing that the 49ers have to fill with their coaching staff, the main piece. I mean, we could talk about offensive coordinator, but that's still Kyle Shanahan. And I'm assuming Clay Kubiak will be in his role. Chris Furster will be in his role. But the next thing would be special teams coordinator. And that should be a position that should be filled early next week. So that's the big takeaway here on a Friday night. 49ers make the big hire, the guy that Kyle Shanahan wanted all along and who it appeared at times like he might not have that opportunity to hire him because every coordinator with it worth his salt wants to be a head coach. And Robert Saleh exhausted those opportunities, and now he is back as the 49ers defensive coordinator. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. That's the big news of the day. And that is it for now.